Jarrell Miller returned to action yesterday after a 4-year absence due to drug bans against a guy called Esteban Bracamonte, who is an Argentinian fighter, some of you may recall, who fought Dave Allen several years ago. Looking for the Allen fight here. Where are we at? Blah, 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 blah. Dave Allen, there we go. 2018 at the Manchester Arena, retired in 7 rounds. Now, Miller has always been a big guy, as we know. In this fight, he weighed in at a career heaviest 341 pounds. Absolutely incredible. The guy's 6'4", so he's not short, but 341 pounds for a guy who's 6'4" is still enormously heavy. His second heaviest ever weight, I'm just looking here, because he's been very heavy before. I think it was, the Thomas Adamek fight where he weighed 317. But here, he tops that by quite a bit at 341. Now, the thing about Miller is that despite having a very high work rate, particularly for a heavyweight, and especially a heavyweight of this size, and being apparently very physically strong, is that he doesn't seem to punch his weight. And I've talked about this before. I think that Miller is so far over his optimum weight that it's actually hurting his punching power. His optimum weight is where he'll be able to rotate his hips to an optimum extent, right? To the extent needed to be able to generate the power, to be able to get his right foot on the ball of the foot when he's turning over a right hand, to be able to bend his knees when he's cranking and throwing his hooks and get maximum rotation in his hooks. He's not able to do this at this point because he's far too heavy, okay? So there comes a point when you're gaining weight where it actually becomes detrimental to your power. You hit a certain point in weight gain where it becomes detrimental to your power. I think Jarrell Miller is actually way past that point. So at this stage, a lot of his shots, and I'm sure they still feel pretty heavy because he's an enormous man. I mean, one of his arms is the size of certain humans, right? So I'm sure it's still not nice to get punched in the face by this guy, but he doesn't hit as hard as you would imagine someone of this size to be hitting. A similar situation with Nikolai Valuev for slightly different reasons, but he was also not a big puncher, even though he weighed north of 300 pounds. So here against Bracamonte, and the reason I raise this is because look here, Bracamonte has been stopped a number of times in his career, as you can see, 8 defeats, 5 by KO. His most recent stoppage defeat was to this individual here back in 2020, and that fight took place in Russia. He was stopped in 5 rounds. Prior to that, he was stopped by a Nigerian heavyweight in 2019 in 1 round. Prior to that, so he had 3 stoppage defeats in a row, 2019 and 2020. So another one here, stopped in 9 rounds. Prior to that, he lost the decision over 10. Prior to that, in 2018, he was stopped by Dave Allen in 7. And I do remember him giving Dave Allen plenty of problems. Okay, but it's just putting it into perspective, the kind of fighter that we're talking about here. He was stopped in 1 round back in 2017. And if you look at these stoppages, there are notes here on BoxRec which show that he was down in several of these fights. So, for example, this fight here where he was stopped in 1 round, he was down once. And he's put other people down, of course. Look at this here. He was down in round 1 against Romanov, etc., etc. So, even though this is a tough guy and a game guy, and he showed that against Dave Allen, he also showed it here against Jarrell Miller. This is a guy who has been stopped a bunch of times. The fact that Miller wasn't able to get him out of there, apparently wasn't even able to put him down, speaks to exactly what I've just been talking about, and that is Miller's lack of punching power. Again, I'm not saying he's feather-fisted, but he doesn't punch as hard as he should. If he's somehow able to shift a lot of this weight maybe we'll see an increase in his punching power. But at this stage of Jarrell Miller's career, you would have thought it unlikely that he can get his weight down significantly, because you look at the trajectory of his weight since 2009 when he first turned pro at 252. It's been going up and 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 up. And it's a matter of how big can Jarrell Miller actually get? That's why I'm asking myself, can this guy reach 400 pounds? Because he's not too far off at this stage, is he? Massively heavy at 240. And in this fight against Bracamonte, I know it's his first fight back in 4 years and you have to make allowances for ring rust and what have you, but he looked poor. There were flashes of some hand speed there from Jarrell Miller. He throws some nice combinations at times, but he was getting hit a lot in this fight, and he was getting hit a lot from early, never really put a serious dent in his opponent. And as I say, the guy has been stopped a number of times, including by Dave Allen. One thing I will say, however, is that Bracamonte is a massively big guy himself. He weighed 305 pounds, which is by far and away the biggest opponent Jarrell Miller has ever faced as a professional. Again, if you look back through his career, Bogdan Dinu, 237, Thomas Adamek, 227, Johan Duopa, 244, Marius Wack, very big guy, 268, but dwarfed in terms of body mass by Jarrell Miller, etc., etc. So perhaps Miller was in new territory, uncharted territory with this opponent, Bracamonte, who is far bigger than the opponents he's used to fighting, because Miller's whole game is to come in there and physically impose himself, to manhandle his opponents. Not necessarily overpower them with the strength of his punches, but overwhelm them by bullying them and pushing them around the ring and landing a lot of punches. You know, he's more of a volume guy than a one-punch knockout artist. And he also relies on being an immovable object himself. His opponents normally can't push him back, and they can't stop him coming forward because he apparently has a pretty good chin. Not that he's fought any massive punches so far, but nobody's managed to buzz him from, as far as I can remember. So these are the things that he relies on. But here against Bracamonte, he was actually getting pushed back in spots because Bracamonte, a very, very large man himself. So not an impressive performance by Miller. But what I will say is, from a personal perspective, even though Miller is a despicable human being by all accounts, just as a boxing fan, I am actually intrigued to see what he can do in the heavyweight division. Even still, despite him being big pharmacy and failing all these tests and whatever, he's had his 4-year ban. Many people believe he should have been banned for life, and perhaps they're right. Be that as it may, he's back, and I am intrigued to see him in the ring with a Deontay Wilder, an Anthony Joshua, and many other fighters out there, because I just want to see how they would cope against this behemoth of a man, what they would do, what their tactics would be. I want to see it. I think he's an interesting addition to the division, not just because of his size and his style and his strength and all this kind of stuff, but also because of his character. He's a larger-than-life individual. He's very mouthy. He's very alpha and a bully kind of character. And I want to see how some of the other heavyweights cope with someone like that from a psychological perspective. So that's my take on Jarrell Miller's comeback. Let me know your take in the comment section below. And who would you like to see him fight again? Do you think that, I think this fight was actually in Argentina. Perhaps there's still issues with him fighting in the States. I'm not sure. But are you interested in watching him fight again, or do you wish that he never gets another opportunity to fight a name in boxing and just fades away into obscurity? Let me know.